So one of the first questions is just a little bit about how you begin your day, maybe like your routine and how you just go about your day really.
Sure, yeah. I like to begin my day with a bit of exercise. Going for a run or a bike ride is a great way for me to kind of wake up my brain and get my body going. So my COVID hobby that I picked up is road biking. So when COVID first hit, I picked up my first road bike and thought I would give that a try. And I've really enjoyed it and done it quite a bit over the summer. And in fact, this Friday I'm gonna attempt my longest ride, which will be from Vancouver to Whistler. So a bit of exercise in the morning and a nice cup of coffee afterwards, and then settling into the daily routine after that.
Sounds good.
Amazing.
Sorry,
Thank you.
how long is that ride? Sorry, we're not much aware with Canada, so.
When did COVID kind of really hit here?
Oh no, sorry. I was asking how long the bike ride that you said you're going to attempt is?
Oh, sorry. The bike ride up to Whistler is about 140 kilometers.
Wow.
And what's more daunting is the elevation gain, which is about 2.5 kilometers of vertical over that distance. And most of it is in the last 40 or 50 clicks from Squamish to Whistler. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a challenge, but I did a training ride this past weekend of about 110K and 2 kilometers of vertical. So that felt good and doable. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, good luck with it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, my question would be, I mean, we've been doing a little bit of research about yourself, but how would you describe your current role and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So my current role, I'm CEO and co-founder of Clio, and my evolution in this role has really been a function of being the co-founder of the company, along with my co-founder Ryan. 12 years ago in 2008, we had this crazy idea: could the cloud be something that could be leveraged to help bring more technology to the legal industry? And in our view, the legal industry was one of the last industries to be fundamentally transformed by technology, and we thought the cloud is a really exciting transformational wave that we might be able to catch and apply to the legal industry. So my role started out as an engineer, where I was coding the first versions of Clio, doing the first customer interviews, wearing all the hats along with Ryan, where we night and day would alternate between coding Clio, shipping Clio, supporting Clio, marketing Clio, and fundraising for Clio. So that's been the journey for me over the last 10 years, is really building the initial versions of Clio, having along with Ryan the original vision for Clio and what we might be able to build with this company, and over the last 12 years, the company's evolved into a massive company, obviously with over 500 employees and customers in over 130 countries, and it's now the world's most widely used legal technology platform. So it's been a pretty wild ride, and my role has obviously over that time evolved from being really getting my hands dirty with coding the application and shipping it and really being on the front lines to now running a 500 person organization. So unfortunately, I don't get to code anymore. I had to give that up a while ago, but the job certainly changed and evolved a lot over the years. But I think the central role that I played has remained the same, which is to help the company realize its vision of transforming the practice of law.
That's good. And was your background mainly from a legal point of view or from an technology point of view?
Yeah, good question. My background is actually in computer science. So I come from the technology side of the equation, and for me, I did my undergrad in computer science, and then I did my master's degree in machine learning, and really just fell in love with algorithms and technology and its ability to really transform industries. And for me, I came out of grad school in the mid 2000s. So, Amazon was just starting to get going. You could see the writing on the wall. You could see how the internet was changing everything. And along with my co-founder, Ryan, we looked at the legal industry and said, this industry is ripe for transformation. Like, there's really a lack of penetration of technology into this industry. There's a huge opportunity for lawyers that embrace technology to massively differentiate themselves. So why don't we give this a shot? And we were kind of amazed when we originally looked at the industry and found that there was no one doing this cloud computing work in the legal industry, and we wondered why, and ultimately, obviously, just decided to jump in and say, well, if nobody else is doing it, there's no reason it shouldn't be us running after this opportunity. And that was the founding story for Clio.
So the following question is about whether you would have done anything differently at the beginning of your career, whether it was at the beginning of your undergrad in studying computer science, or in the process and development of Clio.
No, it's a good question, and I'm a big believer in the idea that you're a product of your combined experiences, and if you take any of those experiences away, you as an individual and maybe your entire path will have changed so substantially that it's really hard to look back and say I would have done this differently, because in a lot of ways I'm very happy with where things have landed with Clio and my own personal journey, and even the the parts of the journey that might have seemed like a mistake or a wrong turn would have, if you took those away, it's possible that Clio and the broader story would have never happened. So I think when I look back at my university days, for example, I was in my undergrad very unsure what I wanted to do, and took a pre-med classes. I was thinking about medicine. I was thinking about actually potentially going into law. I loved computers and had a lifelong passion for computers, so I was dabbling in computer science. So I was taking this really broad mix of prerequisite classes and dabbling in a bit of everything. And after a year or so, finally honed in on computer science, where I wanted to specialize, and that's what I ended up doing my undergrad in. And you might look back and say, I wish I'd just jumped into computer science, but actually that broad-based kind of pre-computer science education that I had has actually been enormously useful in all of my jobs after I did my computer science degree. So my first job out of undergrad, excuse me, was working for a life sciences company, of all things, building diagnostic algorithms for a magnetic resonance imaging machine. And like I said, my previous experience was enormously useful in that context. And with Clio as well, I found that what might have seemed, maybe irrelevant portions of my studies, if you're thinking purely about a programming career, ended up being enormously useful for me as I started building a company. So I think, one thing I wish I had learned a bit earlier that wasn't obvious to me when I was starting Clio, or sorry, when I was graduating from undergrad, was this idea that you can start your own company and build your own product like Clio. And it was really an early Paul Graham book called Hackers and Painters that kind of turned me onto this idea. And it was a very interesting shift in perspective, because when I was going through law school, or going through my computer science degree, I think there's probably a lot of parallels with law school, where the default track is you're going to train up and go and join a big technology company like IBM. That's where a bunch of my classmates were hoping they would get a job at the end of their computer science degree. In the same way, I think many lawyers study and hope that they're going to go get a job at some big fancy law firm. And this book called Hackers and Painters that I read really opened my eyes to the idea that you can build a product. You can build a small little company that sustains you and your family, and you don't need to go work for someone else to do that. You can innovate, you can do a lot of great things, and you can build a revenue source that again, there's huge ranges in terms of how successful this product might be, but it's pretty easy and pretty straightforward to build a product that, instead of working for an IBM of the world, you could work for yourself and support your family off of a company and a product that you build. And that was actually, funnily enough, the original vision with Clio for me and Ryan. We had very modest ambitions at the outset. We hoped that maybe Clio would be successful enough to support us and our two young families at that point. And we never imagined hiring additional employees beyond the two of us. We had, like I said, pretty modest ambitions. So I think that's one thing that I wish I would have been aware of, because if you're not in an environment like Silicon Valley or other places where this is kind of the norm, the default path is just go work for the big technology company, and that's not necessarily, wouldn't have been as fulfilling a path. And I was very, very close to just defaulting to that path.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
That's good. Well, so in you building this company, I'm sure there has been some ups and downs. I mean, some would say quite a few downs. When that happens, how do you bring yourself out back on the feet when you've had that maybe you were hoping for a big break and it didn't come? Right. How do you bring yourself back up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a couple of pieces of that equation. I think number one, to found a company, to start something new, I think you need some level of what I describe as irrational optimism. Like you just need to, even if you have gotten knocked on your butt by some setback, or some customer that left the product, or maybe you didn't successfully complete your fundraising, your lead investor left you at the altar. There's all sorts of things that can happen as you're building a company, and you just need to have this really delicate balance of optimism and realism. And it's a delicate balance, because if you're optimism to the degree of being optimistic to the extent of being delusional, you'll obviously present yourself with some huge existential risks. It's very easy to go out of business because you're being unreasonable in your expectations. But at the same time, the raw math of starting a company, the fact that 9 out of 10 startups fail, for example, and most businesses fail, you can't be a hardcore realist about that, because no one would play those odds. No, if you're brutally honest with yourself, nobody would play those odds because they're just so stacked against you. So I think that optimism is really important, and being able to pick yourself back up after those setbacks. With thanks to that optimism is a huge part of the equation. The other piece I would mention is the importance of a co-founder. So I mentioned Paul Graham earlier, and the book he wrote, Hackers and Painters. And one of the things that Paul Graham, he's the founder of an investment company called Y Combinator. One of the things Paul talks about a lot is just the fact that he won't fund single co-founders because it's just too hard. You need a co-founder to kind of lean on in those tough times when you do feel like giving up, when you do feel like throwing in the towel. And the idea is, if you think about Mark Andreessen characterizes the startup journey as a roller coaster with higher highs than you can imagine, but also lower lows than you would ever contemplate as well. And the hope is that with a co-founder, if you think about it as a sine wave, that those are at least hopefully kind of offset from one another. And when you're in a high, you might be able to pick up your co-founders in a bit of a low, and vice versa. So I think that's a really important dynamic. It's a very tough thing to go through alone, and I think that goes for startups, but I think that also holds to, for law firms. And even if you look at us as a species, we a lot easier to go through life with a partner for a lot of people. So I think that same concept holds for business, and I think it's a really important part of the equation.
Okay, if I might just double down on that, what would you say has been your lowest point in this journey as well with Clio?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that if I think about the hardest points of the journey, it is certainly in the early days where you are really at that liminal state between succeeding and dying, and it's just fundraising. I remember being extremely difficult. We were raising our first investment round in 2009, which was obviously on the wrong side of the economic crisis of 2008, 2009. People just weren't writing checks. We had hired, our first couple of employees, and I remember at one point just had, a couple of months of runway, and we're going to be in a position where we wouldn't be able to make payroll for those people. We had investors that had, left us at the altar or tried to really aggressively retrade on what they had committed to previously. So I would say that early stage of Clio, was certainly the hardest. I think just from a risk management, from a psychological uncertainty, coping with that uncertainty, really, really tough period. And as with many things, once you start building momentum, it, to a certain extent, it feeds on itself, and there's this flywheel effect. So, it was really amazing that raising that first $1 million for Clio, our Series A investment round, was brutally hard. We spent a year doing it. As I mentioned, there was lots of speed bumps along the way. We ended up securing, some amazing investors, led by a guy named Christoph Jans, who's now a very successful VC, doing investment full time. But in those early days, it was really, really tough raising that first investment round. And then once we started seeing some success, and once there was kind of the social proof that other people had invested in Clio, like I said, things started compounding on themselves, and we got this flywheel, and it very quickly inverted from this brutally tough fundraising process, trying to get anyone to invest anything in us, into a situation where I wasn't picking up the phone or answering emails from VCs because they were just beating the doors down. So it was a very interesting kind of flip. So that's where the irrational optimism pays off. You got to persevere through those tougher periods. Often there's a payoff waiting on the other end, but it would have been very easy to throw in the towel at one point.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is a little bit about, you kind of covered it in this one, but it's more, I guess, about ourselves as students who are approaching the beginning or the end of our undergraduate degrees. And what advice would you give to people like ourselves and all the other young people in the current situation? The job market, as you probably know, is shocking. I'm graduating next year, and I've been looking, and there's no grad jobs. There's nothing, there's nothing, because people that are in jobs have lost them. So for people like ourselves, we're in a really sticky situation. But what advice would you kind of give to get through, or how to seek opportunities when there's literally nothing available?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's a place where striking out on your own can be a really promising path. I think that what you have to your advantage is no legacy. You've got savviness with technology. You've got a blank slate in terms of how you design the way that you're delivering your legal services. And I think on one hand, you're right, there's many traditional firms that are not hiring and are really just hunkering down for the long haul and even laying off their existing staff. But on the other hand, if you look at the macro environment around COVID-19, I think we have people with huge number of legal issues. We have this, what I would describe as a pending tsunami of legal issues that are going to need to be addressed, and a legal services marketplace right now that is I believe foundationally and fundamentally ill-equipped to deliver legal services in the way they need to be delivered in this kind of an environment. So I would look at that as an opportunity. I think for young law grads looking at the marketplace right now through an entrepreneurial lens is really the way to tackle this problem and turn it into an opportunity. And I think if you can get innovative in the way that you're pricing and packaging your legal services, if you can figure out ways of delivering your legal services in a way that your overhead and your cost structure is lower than the incumbents on the marketplace, you'll be able to carve out a really nice niche for yourself. And back to Paul Graham and Hackers and Painters, it doesn't need to be the world's biggest opportunity. You need to go find an opportunity to generate a livelihood for you and your family. And that's actually pretty straightforward. You can carve out a pretty small sliver of the legal opportunity out there for yourself. And if you're being innovative in the way you're thinking and designing your legal services, if you take advantage of the fact that you've got no legacy, I think it's enormously liberating and easy to ignore the fact that you're liberated from many of the things weighing down traditional law firms. You don't have any long-term leases on property. You don't have office space. You don't have any of these things that are structurally making these firms uncompetitive in today's marketplace. You can go find people, let's just use an example, people that need employment related issues resolved, where their employment was impacted by COVID. That's an area of law you specialize in. Put up a website, have a fixed fee legal representation, have Zoom calls with your clients from your home office. You don't need a physical office anymore to do that. So I think that's the kind of way I would look at the opportunity to say you can price your services in new ways, not necessarily charging less, by the way, but maybe you do things like offer subscription services. Maybe you offer installment plans for your clients, knowing that they're having the same cash flow issues that everyone else is in the current economic climate. You find ways of acquiring clients online as opposed to acquiring them, in physical space, the way so many law firms are used to with networking at their local chamber of commerce meeting. I talk a lot about the idea of being client-centered and being a client-centered law firm as well. And I think applying that line of thinking to the opportunity that's out there is something that will unlock an enormous amount of opportunity as well.
Amazing.
So that's,
thank you so much.
I would look at it as a disruptive opportunity, and really I think that the new law firms entering the market with no legacy and an innovative business model have a massive advantage over the incumbents trying to navigate the same waters that these innovative new firms are going to be at the same time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And well, my question will sort of pick up from that, from an AI point of view. It seems, we've been told that AI is going to come and take some legal jobs as well and things like that.
Right.
I don't know, where do you see AI within the legal framework, and how that, what we can do as well to just make sure we are future-proof within the AI, whatever that's coming in the next few years?
Yeah, good question. I think a few comments. I think number one, AI has, I think, been widely misunderstood by the legal community, and maybe the degree of a threat that it poses has been misunderstood as well, and perhaps exaggerated. I think this idea that the robots are coming and they're coming to take all of our jobs, take all the legal jobs, is certainly not a future that I envision. I think really what we're going to see is artificial intelligence augment human lawyers and replace the most mundane and the most robotic aspects of our jobs. So I think if you're a lawyer doing something that feels like it could be automated, if you're doing a job with the amount of repetition and the amount of monotony that it feels like this should be something that a smart computer should be able to do, I would find a way of trying to move up the value chain, because there's a ton of legal work that is higher up in the value chain. And I believe artificial intelligence and machine learning will take away some of that mundane layer of work. And an example would be contract review. Once upon a time, if a company was acquiring another company, they would do contract review and hire a small army of lawyers to do due diligence and run through every contract, looking for clauses that could potentially bite the company and have lasting repercussions. And now there's companies like Kira Systems that have algorithms and artificial intelligence that can do that same contract review and surface those contracts surface a very small percentage of those contracts to human lawyers for more extensive review. So I think that's the different landscape that we're looking at today, which is one where humans are augmented by computers and artificial intelligence. But I think that really we're not going to see lawyers face an existential threat due to AI anytime in the near term. And I think what we see in the Legal Trends Report, and what we see from the surveys we do of consumers as well, is that when people are working with lawyers, they really value the human connection. And in our surveys, consumers, for example, show a much stronger bias for an in-person meeting, or failing that, a Zoom meeting with a lawyer than even a phone call or an email, for example. So I think, again, thinking about how do I double down on my unique advantage as a human being, and I think those are skills like empathy, right? And really being able to be empathetic to your client's needs and designing your legal services around that empathetic perspective is something that is, I think, a uniquely human capability. So if you're thinking about the competitive landscape and thinking about how do I differentiate myself from other lawyers on one hand, and how do I help protect my job in the face of a robot army that might be coming at some point in the future. I think taking that client-centered perspective and taking that empathetic view on how you should be delivering your legal services is really a great way of solving both of those challenges. But I think, there's massive opportunities for real efficiencies to be gained in law firms by leveraging not just machine learning, by the way, but technologies that have been around for 20 years, like document automation, that can really help the average law firm dramatically transform its efficiency. And if they do a good job of that, it just changes the math in terms of how efficiently they're able to deliver their legal services. And again, that's something that unlocks a huge amount of opportunity in the broader marketplace.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. That's the end of our interview, but thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I think we just one quick, last question in terms
go for it.
Opportunities and ability to connect with you beyond this interview. Is there anything that you could perhaps offer to me and Liberty himself, or anything that that would help us in the future?
Well, to both of you and anyone that might be listening, I'm always happy to chat. So drop me an email at jack@clio.com. I'm on Twitter at Jack_Newton. In terms of resources, I've got my own book here, which I'll plug, but you could read this, which talks about some of the ideas around being a client-centered law firm. The book is titled The Client-Centered Law Firm and came out just last year. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the ideas that I talk about in that book are more relevant now than ever. There's a real opportunity to reboot and redefine how we deliver legal services. And again, I think there's a lot of grim news out there, and I know it can be a depressing time to be a new graduate in any field, and it's a challenging time to be entering an environment full of so much uncertainty. But the optimistic take that I'll reinforce here is just I think this is a disruptive impact on the world that, as with any crisis, and we saw this with the 2008-2009 crisis, there were many law firms that struggled, and even many law firms that failed into the 2008-2009 crisis. But there were also many law firms that were founded and many law firms that thrived over the course of that period and actually emerged from the crisis stronger than when they entered it. So I think they can be real crucibles for people where they're either going to inflect downward and fail outright, or it's actually going to help them accelerate success they would have seen otherwise. And when you look at the legal marketplace, you look at the World Justice Project data, for example, that shows us that 77% of issues that consumers have, legal issues that consumers have, do not go addressed by lawyers. And you look at the supply side of the equation, and you have 80% of lawyers saying, I need more clients. There's an enormous opportunity. I describe that opportunity as the latent legal market, this latent legal market of consumers and businesses with legal issues that the current legal services marketplace is not able to effectively solve, is a massive opportunity for any new grad to think about, how do I go and innovate? How do I go and solve some part of the pain points that exist in that latent legal market? And that's a multi-$100 billion opportunity waiting for innovative law firms to figure out how to tackle it. So I think if you are thinking about the traditional legal model and how do I go and pursue the traditional career path at the traditional big law firm, it's going to look like a bleak picture. But I think the reality is that the days of the traditional law firm are numbered, and that you're way further ahead and going to have way more lifelong success if you, in your mind's eye at least, tear up that business model and say, how can I go and innovate and deliver legal services in a way that they previously haven't been able to be delivered, thanks to all of the development we've seen in technology, and I would also say the radical shift in consumer technology readiness in the last 6 months as well. If you look at how the world has changed from January to today, every consumer out there knows how to do a Zoom call. Everyone knows how to have a Zoom meeting. Everyone, 6 months ago, if you asked them, would you like to work with your lawyer over a Zoom call, they probably would have said, no, I want to go down to their expensive AAA office space. Now we see a reality where consumers would prefer to do a Zoom call. So leverage all of these dramatic changes to your benefit. And I think when you use that lens, there's actually an ocean of opportunity out there.
Sorry, and just a follow up to that, you're talking about us trying to look into this, going it alone, so to speak. I mean, what would you be of advice? I mean, in hindsight, in terms of, because we are thinking maybe I need to go and get some experience with a good law firm before I actually go in to open that, if I'm going to go that route. Would you say it's better to just, take it, from the day you graduate and you think, what, I'm just going to try this without the normal experience? Or if I have an opportunity to go and do like a 1 year experience with a law firm and get that on my bag and then, jump in?
I think the ideal is getting experience if you can. I think just to train yourself up and learn the ropes to an extent, if you can do that, have some kind of apprenticeship period, absolutely do that. I think that's invaluable. But I think in today's marketplace, we're in a situation where it can just be really hard to get that experience. Mm-hmm. So you may want to just be really strategic. And I don't necessarily recommend going it absolutely alone, but try to band together with maybe another graduating classmate and go and see if you can find, for example, another more experienced attorney or that might be able to support your firm and pull them out of a bigger firm. There's lots of people that have that experience at a big firm that are looking to leave the big firm and look to go it alone. So there's a million ways that you can slice this problem without going through the kind of traditional career path that we might have gone through, 5 or 10 years ago. You're really saying, I want someone that's more senior that I can lean on and refer to for advice and expertise, somebody that maybe knows the ropes around, running a law firm, but you can actually realize that benefit in a lot of different ways through a mentorship relationship, maybe by bringing them into your firm. I think it's another place we can innovate, and that's where networking and getting to know people that are outside of your kind of immediate circle is so important, because you can start to build those relationships, start to lead on them as mentors, and like I said, maybe ultimately recruit them to form a partnership with you.